everybody, my name is Mackenzie Westcott, and my video presentation is on one of my coworkers who is also my friend slash acquaintance, or however you want to word it. I actually, I'm not gonna lie, I struggled with this presentation from day one. I struggled with it because I don't feel like I've worked with somebody who really differs in spirituality or religion from me. I don't feel like I am in a very diverse area. I actually grew up in a much more, how do I want to word it? An area that was much less diverse than this. And I moved out here because this was much more diverse than that, because I wanted more diversity. So I'm interested in finding more, which is why I enjoyed this project, but it was definitely a challenge for me. So by doing this, I actually got to know my friend a lot more than I thought I already knew her. So I talked to her a little bit about something that she already enjoys, and got to find out that really what she thought she enjoyed is something that is actually very spiritual to her, and something that maybe she didn't even recognize as something that was spiritual before. So she is a 26-year-old white female. She is heterosexual, and she is of the working class. And I apologize, I do not know how to turn the brightness down on my screen. If I figure that out, we'll definitely turn down. So I just wanted to go over a little bit of my interviewee's history, because I think that's really important when talking a little bit about what she, or why she got into, I'm going to call her spirituality. So what she does is she is very into nature. She likes to go on hiking trips and really like just explore and find waterfalls. It's just a huge part of her life. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but so her family background is a big part of this. So with that being said, she had a lot of trauma growing up, and with that trauma led to a lot of chaos in her younger years. So that, and by younger years I mean from literally the time she was a toddler until, you know, her teen years up until honestly now. She's still struggling with some of that. So her father did pass away when she was 3 years old. Her mother is addicted to substances and still continues to try to cause chaos in her life, and she tries to avoid that. And this is a way for her to find an outlet and a way to get away from that part of things. So her just a little bit about her working history too. She has worked in foster care, and she also works with people with substance abuse. So just a little bit of her educational history as well. She does have her undergraduate degree, and she is going for her master's degree as well. So I just wanted to go over some of the questions that we went over in the interview. So the first question I went with is, how would she describe herself in terms of her spiritual path? So when I initially talked to her, she didn't think she was spiritual. She was like, I'm not spiritual, I'm not religious, that doesn't exist to me. So, I had to actually go over the definition of spirituality and what that meant. I broke it down very simply. I described it as peace within our inner self. So following that, she discussed that nature was something she felt was a very big release for her. And I'm just going to move this box because I don't want it to be in the way of the words. I want everybody to be able to read that. I'm sorry. She felt that nature was a release for her and gave her a sense of peace and relaxation. A sense of escape from life's larger problems temporarily. And I want to point out that she did use the word temporarily, because she wanted to make it known that she knows that she has to go back to deal with the bigger picture and to deal with what's going on in the real world and with reality. For example, with what's going on with her mom. The other question I asked is, how did you come to this place in your journey? So I thought this was a hard question to ask originally because she didn't think she was spiritual. But I think once we understood what the definition of spiritual was and her finding peace within her inner self, I think it was a little bit easier to understand. So we determined, or really she determined, that her coming to that place was just her working to get the outcome that she wants, because life doesn't always give you what you want. But this way she could work to get something that she wants and she could get a beautiful outcome. So I want to relate this back to her working history. And when we work with substance abuse and we work in foster care, we don't always get outcomes that we want. Oftentimes we get outcomes that are hard to deal with. And later on I'm going to relate this to vicarious trauma. So this to her was just giving her a sense of getting something beautiful, something that, you know, she could look forward to. It also gave her a sense of peaceful fulfillment because of everything that goes on during the day, not just with work. We got to think our personal lives, on top of that. So what should social workers know about this group of people? So she talked a little bit about coping skills and how just doing this doesn't have to be a spiritual path for people, but it could just be a coping skill. She wants people to understand the trauma behind why people might turn to a spiritual path. And she explained, excuse me, I'm sorry, it's cold. She explained that people might not always turn to a spiritual path because of trauma, but oftentimes people have a history behind why they're turning that way. So she just wanted social workers to understand that there's more behind what's going on, and for us to look for that. I asked her what about being in nature makes her feel more at ease. I thought this was a really good question because she talked a lot about it being peaceful for her. So it just kind of fell into the conversation naturally. So she discussed growing up again and how chaotic it was at times with her mom, and she talked about this providing a sense of it slowing things down. So oftentimes in this field that we're in, we don't slow things down. We speed things up. We want to make everything happen for everybody as soon as possible, and we can't. We have to slow down. We have to make sure we're doing what we're doing because and doing it right, because if we don't, we could harm somebody more than helping them. I did ask her about meditation. So when she was talking, it sounded like she was describing being in nature as a sense of meditation for her. So I asked her if she would relate finding waterfalls and being in nature in any way to meditation practices. And she described to me that she would not relate it to meditation practices. And I thought this was interesting because I myself at first would not have related it to meditation practices because I believed in guided meditation and that was meditation to me. That's what I believed in. She's the same way. Probably why we get along so well. So I thought that was very interesting just to see her beliefs on that and where her mindset was with that. So I asked her if she finds people are as connected to nature and waterfalls as she is. And she says not to the same extent and not as often. So, like I said, we don't live in an extremely diverse area. Both of us grew up in much less diverse areas than what we live in now, but we don't live in a hugely diverse area. So I think it's difficult to find that and to find people that we can share that with. So I just want to go into a little bit of the scholarly material that I connected this with. And one of the quotes that stood out to me in Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl was logotherapy. And it says, logotherapy considers man a being whose main concern consists of fulfilling a meaning. So this to me supported what she's saying. So her search for meaning is going out and being in nature and finding waterfalls. And to her, that's finding her sense of meaning. To her, that her purpose, that's what she's doing. That's finding her fulfillment in life. That's her enjoyment. That is what brings her peace. That's what brings her satisfaction. The next scholarly material that I related this to was the Van Hook text that discussed the definition of spirituality as something that doesn't have to be an organized system. And I thought this was very important because originally we talked about how we weren't sure this was a spiritual thing, but we talked about the definition of spirituality and how it doesn't have to be something like a church, and it can just be a person's emotions and their goals and how they intertwine with them finding a reason for doing what they're doing. So I definitely thought this was very interesting, and I thought it absolutely supports her and this being a spiritual path for her. So one of the articles we had in class was by Dombo and Gray, and it discussed meditation as something that can help vicarious trauma. So I talked about wanting to bring this back to vicarious trauma. And I chose this article because my interviewee worked in foster care and had the potential to experience vicarious trauma. So vicarious trauma, as we know, is secondary. So as social workers, we can experience this if our clients experience trauma firsthand and we're working with them. So the article discussed meditation as being helpful for professionals as self-care practices as to prevent vicarious trauma. And I would say that this would support her. However, going with what she says, because I think it's important to collaborate and take into consideration what our interviewee and what our clients are saying. Going with what she says, I feel like I would say it would diverge from it because she's going with guided meditation, so that's her belief. Washburn's stages of change. So I wanted to point out that stage 2 is the I'm going to say this wrong, I always do, egoic stage of change that discusses that people stay in this for much of their lives and rarely enter stage 3, the transegoic stage. So I diverge with this. I think that there needs to be a stage between 2 and 3. So I'm actually going to pause here only because I got to create a second video because I'm going to run out of time. So give me a few minutes and I will be right back with you guys.